Certainly, I would say the single most controversial decision that you've made as president of the NCAA, I'm sure you would agree, was to institute those penalties in the Penn State case.
Our goal is not to be just punitive, but to make sure the university establishes an athletic culture and daily mindset in which football will never again be placed ahead of educating, nurturing, and protecting young people.
At the time, I understand what you were trying to say, which is that this is not a precedent setter. This is a one-time extraordinary situation in which obviously there was incredibly egregious and negligent behavior on the part of this university, and therefore we were going to do this as a one-time scenario. I think you at least have to concede that that part of the message hasn't gotten through, because every time a situation comes up and your answer, someone says, well, why don't you do this? And your answer is, well, that's not our procedures. Everyone says, well, what about Penn State? You went around all those procedures in Penn State. Why don't you do it here? So I don't know if you think that was a mistake. Was it a mistake to make those penalties? But at the very least, do you concede that that has caused a whole nother level of problems where that level of communication, that message has not cut through?
Well, first of all, let's get back to the imposition of penalties. So again, back to the authority of the president of the NCAA. I have no authority to do any of that. That the imposition of penalties was a decision of the executive committee of the NCAA, which is a group of a dozen or so university and college presidents. Under the NCAA Constitution, they do have that authority, and they made those decisions collectively. And I and the chair of the executive committee were the ones that communicated it to the world, not the ones who actually made those decisions. So it was a group decision by a group of university presidents to both, with my support, to both put in place these extraordinary decision-making approach to this issue and to deal with the university in a way that had never been done before, predominantly because of the extraordinary nature of the circumstances. So here we had what everyone agrees is awful behavior going on, at least in part, in connection with the football program and the athletic department, had a incredibly thorough investigation that the university itself had accepted, much greater and much more detailed than our enforcement staff could ever have generated. And the university agreed that—
Which they outsourced, by the way, to Louis Free.
Well, they outsourced, but what they did do that the NCAA would be extremely unlikely to ever do is the board of Penn State said, and we are ordering everybody in Penn State to turn over everything these people ask for. They did, in fact, have subpoena power, at least inside the institution. Now, no university has ever done that, and was likely to do it again to an outside investigator, just say, you can look anywhere and you can dig up anything you want. So along comes Penn State with this huge report. They said, yep, those are the facts. We buy into that. There really wasn't any utility in dragging out for another year or two. Think about how long that case would have lasted. An investigation that would have yielded no more information than what was already in front of the executive committee. So it was a very unusual circumstance in every respect, and one that no one ever wants to go back through.
Any regrets, any second thoughts about that decision? Penn State had already accepted these findings. The NCAA could have just left it at that and stayed out of it.
Well, the executive committee didn't agree. They thought that they weren't focused on the criminal process. Criminal process is the criminal process. We don't have anything to do with that. What the executive committee was worried about was that the behavior around all of this, as outlined in that report and agreed to by the university, was clearly so orthogonal to, antagonistic to all the values of intercollegiate athletics and the values that are codified in the NCAA's Constitution that they couldn't stand back and not act. Now we can sit and say, well, it would have been better if this or that would have happened, but the truth is you can't go back and run the experiment again. So yes, we had a lot of people that were unhappy. Yes, we have people saying, well, you're going to do it again, and why don't you do it again? And we have the communication issues you brought up, but ask yourself, what would have been the outcome if the NCAA would have said, well, we don't care about this. This is irrelevant to us. What would that have done to people's faith in intercollegiate athletics? What would that have done to people's belief that the NCAA has high values that they expect people to live by? What would that have looked like a year and a half later we don't know. We don't get to do those experiments. We have to make the best judgment at the time that the issues in front of us, with the information in front of us. And the executive committee, I think, did that well.